Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. My name is Kyle King. I'm the Managing Director of Capacity Building International, and welcome to another webinar in our series for 2021. We had a lot of new registrations for this particular event, so I just wanted to spend kind of the first couple of minutes as normal and to just kind of go over the administrative issues for this webinar, and then of course we'll get started. So as for today, today's another webinar in our series for 2021 with regards to international models in emergency management, and this time we're going to focus on the Czech Republic. And of course, some of the things that we want to do throughout this webinar process is if you do have any questions, let's please use that Q&A session. Of course, the chat is open if you just want to make any comments or anything else like that. I am joined here today, of course, by Harold Drager from Teams, and then also from Victoria from Capacity Builder International, who will be monitoring the questions behind the scenes as we go throughout this presentation. We're currently in terms of the webinar series itself, we're up to 34 nations and the people that have registered for the webinar so far. And so that's really great in terms of the series itself. And it's good to see that kind of wide distribution across the globe from people from this community, from the emergency management and the crisis management community within itself. So that's really great to see, and we want to keep that going on. And we've got quite a number of additional webinars to go throughout this year, and I think some of them, all of them are going to be really great. So moving forward for today, so I just introduced myself. Of course, Harold is here, and after I get through these kind of opening remarks, then we'll head over to Harold for his opening remarks, and then we'll turn it over to Magda, who's our emergency management expert from the Czech Republic. As you probably know already, but if you are new and you aren't aware, we do have the LinkedIn event that is under Capacity Building International. That's the 2021 webinar series. And what I'd recommend you do is join that, because if you join that, and there's about 178 people that are in that LinkedIn event at the moment, what it allows you to do is it actually allows you to get notifications when we post new content, such as when we post the slides from our India event, where we had Professor Menon, who was here speaking with us and explaining the challenges within India and emergency and disaster management. And of course, you get notifications when everything is posted and updated. So if you haven't done that already, head over to LinkedIn and search for that event. It's under Capacity Building International, and you'll be able to find that. You join that event, and you can get the notifications and everything else that goes along with that. So that's where you can find the event information. And of course, our events are spread across all time zones. And so we want to appreciate the fact that many of you are joining from the States, which is it's very early in the morning for many of you. And many of us are currently based out of Europe. I'm currently in Ukraine, and then we have others that are joining from around the world as well. So we have appreciation of these time zones. And one of the reasons why I wanted to bring that up is because of the fact that in our next webinar that we're going to be doing, focusing on the systems and used in China, that's going to be at a different time. So that's going to be probably earlier in the afternoon for us, which is probably very early in the morning for the United States. But just be aware of that. But go ahead and register, get your name on the list, and you'll get the recordings and everything else that go along with that. But we do need to fluctuate the time because we also have presentation from Sydney, from Australia, coming up as well. So, and as I mentioned, all these different future webinars are coming from different models that are going to be presented from different national authorities and experts in their field. And we're going to have Finland, I already mentioned Australia, but United Kingdom, Kosovo, Germany, Italy, France, and also a mini series that's going to be coming up with University of Manchester. And we're going to be talking about recovery and renewal post-pandemic. And there's a special series that they're doing as part of their research, and we're going to get involved with that with Teams, with CBI and University of Manchester. And we're going to explore some of the topics that they're discussing in what we might call a mini series that's a break off from our 2021 series that we're doing with Teams itself. So just keep in mind, so stay in that LinkedIn group. All these things are going to be posted there. That's kind of going to be the one-stop shop that we're using to send out the information, and also through our events list as well. So what I want to do now at this point, that's kind of covering the administrative portions. And what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Harold for his opening remarks as well. Harold, over to you.
Yeah, hello everybody, wherever you are on the globe. Okay, I did present a little bit about Teams in the last conference, but I'd just like to do some reminders. And you see this beautiful picture from Paris with the balloons in the French color of their flag and the Eiffel Tower. I'd just like to remind you that we have the annual conference in Paris You can go at the website and you see what happened in the virtual conference last year. This year, we try to do it both virtual and physically, that we can meet in Paris. We don't know that yet, but we hope that's possible. So I remind you, there will soon be out call for papers. Before and part of this, I have recruited to this webinar series people from Teams network, the chapters around the world. Like last presentation was from India, from Vinod Menon. And here you see a picture of the organization of Teams, where we have chapters and members and the organization as such. And if you go to this part of the website, you see how Teams is built up. And I would just like to show you where we have chapters. So here you see the picture of chapters around the world. We don't have any in Czech Republic, actually. So this is also a reminder to Magda that I would like to take up our dialogue after your presentation, that we could see if we also could do that. Because all these chapters, and for those of you who attend today and that you see, oh, I'm not on the map, so please contact me and we can talk about how is it to create a chapter. Actually, you find it on our website, as you can see of this, and this network of chapters and members around the world are very important for communication. And all those who participate with chapters in Teams, we do or build up what we call Teams International Group of Experts. At the moment, it consists, and there is a list on Teams website, where each of those involved are listed with name, where they come from, their position, what unit of Teams they belong to, and their fields of expertise. And we have here, which you find on the website, 104 members from 22 countries. And this is a very unique group of experts, especially coming to research work we do, where we recruit from these people, participate in the project we are doing where Teams participate. At the moment, we are involved in one project called Impetus, which is about smart cities. So think about this and contact me or use the website to send the messages. And the last one today, which I like to remind you on, is Teams International Certification, which we call TQC, is up and running, and you can contact us for being certified. We are actually now working, adding what we call TQAC, an associate certification, because we do see that this also could be good for academics who doesn't have experience yet, which is required in the TQC certification. So we will be soon out with an addition on this. This is what I would like to say in this opening, and turn over again to Kyle, who can introduce our speaker tonight.
Thanks, Harold. Thanks. Yeah, so now I'll just turn it over to Magda. So Magda, if you take just a couple of seconds to introduce yourself and your background, and then we can go ahead and get started.
Of course. Hi, and good morning, afternoon, and evening to everyone. My name is Magda Koutková. I come from the Czech Republic, where I work as the deputy head of the crisis management department of the Fire and Rescue Service, which is the authority responsible for emergency management in the Czech Republic. So you've probably seen part of my bio in the invitation. So I work for Czech Republic, EU, and NATO. So hopefully I will be able to put all the information to you comprehensively enough with my experience as to how the other countries or organizations receive it. So without further ado.
All right, great. Yeah, let's get started.
Let's first short presentation overview what you can expect now. First, there will be a couple of words about the Czech Republic, its security system, and the legal framework. Then I'll explain what the integrated rescue system means, the crisis management bodies in the Czech Republic are, a couple of words about national risk assessment, state of crisis and crisis response measures. And since this was also included as one of the wanted or requested topics, if there's a bit of time left, I will get to awareness raising and to exercises. Okay, so the Czech Republic, for those of you who are not sure exactly where it is, you can see it on the right side on the map. It's basically the heart of Europe. Usually you see this on the Brussels airport, but we think the Czech Republic is the real heart of Europe. As you can see, it's not a big country, just shy of 80,000 square kilometers, with rather big population density, 10.7 million inhabitants, and about 1,900 kilometers of borders. What's a bit interesting, there are no Schengen external borders, so all of our neighbors are EU countries that are in the Schengen. So we don't really need to guard the borders much, with the exception of international airports. That makes our life a bit easier. Also on the map, you see the administrative division, the whole nation, then the regions, districts, and municipalities. As you can see, there are 14 regions and more than 6,000 municipalities. I'm explaining this because the whole emergency management system is built around these three levels: national, regional, and municipal. The municipalities, there are three types of them, because municipality can be anything from 40 inhabitants to 1.3 million, which is Prague. And every one of them has their structures. The three types are municipality with extended competency, then with some state administrative, and with, let's say, basic competency. So mostly it's the first kind, the municipality with extended competencies. It's a division based on how much state administration they perform. So these three levels are quite important. Also, I saw with the last presentation that there was some information about what emergencies are the most frequent ones. The Czech Republic is quite lucky because we don't have any tsunamis, any volcanic eruptions, any strong earthquakes, nothing like this. We usually fight floods, landslides, and mostly things like this, even though now it may seem that we are only dealing with COVID, which is not exactly true, because the Central Europe is battling avian and swine influenza right now, and in our case, because of the drought, it's also the bug beetle calamity, so there's always quite a lot to do. So, legal framework of the security system. As you can see, the basis is, of course, the Constitution of the Czech Republic and the Constitutional Act on the Security. The interesting thing, you may see the number behind the slash is the year in which the act was approved. And you can see there is nothing older than 1993. That's because the Czech Republic is a rather young country. It came into being in 1992 after the split of Czechoslovakia. So all of our acts are rather new, let's say modern. Of course, they go from the original Czechoslovakian laws, but there are some differences between the Czech and Slovak Republic, because then in later years we went in a bit different directions. The three most important acts concerning emergency management are Crisis Management Act, Economic Measures for Solving Crisis Situations Act, and Integrated Rescue System Act. As you can see, according to their numbers, they are all from year 2000, and they have very, very similar numbers. There's one explanation for that, and that's that in 1997 there was this huge flood. with quite a lot of casualties and big damages. And in this time, the politicians and the experts somehow came together, and there was a political will to change things. And these three acts are the result of this political will. Because basically there are three things you need to solve an emergency. You need the legal background, the measures, you need people or the bodies, and you need money and material equipment, let's say resources. So this is exactly what these three acts do. The Crisis Management Act takes care of the crisis response measures and of the system itself. Integrated Rescue System Act, I will speak about what it is a bit later. It covers the bodies, let's say the hands that work on the emergency resolution, and the economic measures, let's say they specify what can be prepared or bought in advance and how will it be financed, when it can be claimed, and so on. On the right hand, you can see the Defense of the Czech Republic Act. It's the most important from the, let's say, sum of acts dealing with the defense of the Czech Republic, but this is basically a very, very large and different branch. So I won't go into it, but it's part of the system. Also, it is necessary to remark that all these acts are interconnected and interdependent. So there are a lot of remarks in the acts pointing to different acts and so on. As I was saying, these three acts came into being because of the floods in 1997, and this is basically something similar to what's happening now. Even though we try to be prepared for the emergencies and to deal with them, sometimes it's actually almost good for us experts to have some emergency, because it's usually a tipping point where we can really show that not everything is perfect with the system, and it gives us a bit of leeway to put through some changes that we were trying to do. For example, it's now with COVID and our Pandemic Act, which was in preparations many years, but there was never really a political will to change the system that much. And now it's very probable that we will be able to put it through. So I also put a slide about, let's say, emergency evolution. Because there are, let's say, three types of events we can deal with via emergency management. The first one is, let's call it event outside the integrated rescue system. It could be a small thing. You go out on your bike, you get a heart attack, you call an ambulance, they come, they take care of you, and basically that's done. It's just emergency medical service. You don't need no cooperation. It's just done in scope of one body. So let's say it's in scope of the Emergency Management, Emergency Medical Service Act. When you have an emergency, it's something bigger. The example could be, for example, here, some bigger car crash. You can see on the picture there is police, there is emergency medical service, there are firefighters, because every one of these three services need to be present. They have their work to be done, and it was necessary to really specify their rights and duties, who does what, who leads the intervention, so that the people aren't in each other's way, and so that everything functions really smoothly. So this will be done under the Integrated Rescue System Act. For the third, the crisis, for the third example, I chose floods, because, as I said, it's one of the frequent emergency that is in the Czech Republic, and this will be done under the Crisis Management Act, because it's already outside the scope of medical service or firefighters. You need really whole of region or whole of country coordination to be able to deal with this. Usually a government is in session and they need to take some decisions concerning the emergency. You just can't deal with it on a day-to-day basis. Maybe just one mention to this when I speak about crisis. This is sometimes linguistics for us that are non-English speakers. In the Czech Republic, crisis basically means a large emergency. In English-speaking world, it would be either political crisis or something really large, extremely complicated, military crisis, and so on. So this is also one of the things to take into consideration when you are studying different systems, because just some slight change of terminology can put everything aside. Good example would be in, for example, Czech or German language, the word safety and security, because in Czech and German, there's just one word for them. So if you want to know if we mean safety or security, you need to specify it further. You can't get the information from, let's say, the normal word used. So crisis in the Czech Republic would then be basically a state when the state of crisis needs to be declared and special measures need to be taken to deal with the situation. So as you can see, you have three steps of the pyramid: a Crisis Management Act, Integrated Rescue System Act, and the acts on separate units or services. And in the next slides, we will deal with who does what. But first, a short mention about the security system of the Czech Republic as a whole. As you can see, there is, let's say, bottom, roof, and three pillars. So you have armed forces, the military, meaning army, taking care of the national defense. Security forces, which are non-military, it's usually police, municipal police, and such, taking care of public order and the security, non-military security. And the third pillar would be rescue and emergency services, meaning usually fire and rescue service, taking care of preparedness, rescue, and population protection. Above, you see the president, parliament, and the government. The most important role goes to the government because, unlike, for example, the United States, the president hasn't got many powers, but the government, when it comes to some large emergencies, decides basically on everything. But also at the bottom, you see the national, regional, and municipal authorities, companies, but also normal people, etc. Because in the system, according to the Crisis Management Act, everyone has their role, even the, let's say, normal people or companies. For example, you're a company that owns a bus, and so when there's a crisis, you can be asked to provide evacuation via this bus. Or a normal person can be asked to perform so-called working duty, to perform some works. For example, now in the COVID situation, the students of medical faculties are given this, it's obligation, they have to do it. It is paid, yes, but they have really no choice. It's one of the crisis response measures, and they have to help in the hospitals which are severely overloaded. So the government decided to send the 6th and 5th year medical students to the hospitals to help with the COVID situation. Okay, so we are getting to the integrated rescue system. As you can see, I'm using the abbreviation IRS, but those from the United States, it doesn't mean Internal Revenue Service, so really integrated rescue system. This is also one of the things I encountered a couple of years ago when I was doing a presentation for the American colleagues. They thought the abbreviation meant something else. So what do we mean with integrated rescue system? As I already said, this is one of the things that came into being after the 1997 floods. where it was identified we need to have better coordination among the bodies dealing with the emergency. So there is a definition in the IRS Act that this is a coordinating proceedings of its bodies during preparation for emergencies and during rescue and remedy works. What does it mean? It means that this is not some institution with some head and secretariat and I don't know a budget, but it's just a system of links and cooperation and let's say rules between the units of the integrated rescue system that are defined by the Act on IRS. What's important, if you recall the first step of the pyramid, the existence of the integrated rescue system doesn't affect the other activities on its bodies that are based upon special laws. For example, the Emergency Medical Service Act. If there is a medical emergency that is dealt only with the medical people, you don't need integrated rescue system and it won't be put into action. So this is really for the step 2 or 3 of the pyramid, as you have seen. So the IRS is a multi-purpose, let's say, construct, and it was established due to necessity of everyday joint rescue operations. It is really tested on daily basis because every car crash, every let's say chemical leak, everything, the integrated rescue system is used because it basically means that 2 or more IRS bodies have to carry out the rescue or some remedy works, and they have to do it simultaneously. As I showed on the second step of the pyramid, you have a car crash. So the firefighters come usually as the first ones. They need to let's say take care of the gas leaking out of the car. They need to get the people out of the deformed cars. The police comes and they need to tell the other cars that they can't go through and deal with the traffic. The medical people come usually as the third ones because there are not enough doctors in these EMS, and everybody does what they should do. But there is a necessity to have rules to, let's say, coordinate the rescue operation on place. And that's why the Institute of Joint Commander has been introduced. It's usually a firefighter because the firefighters come usually as the first one. And there's also a Joint Operations Center. That means for those of you from Europe, the telephone number 112, if you call it, it will go to the fire and rescue service, but they can send you medical people or police or firefighters. That's why it's Joint Operations Center. And the Joint Commander, it basically means that it doesn't matter how many and which units are on the place of the intervention. There's always one commander, meaning the firefighter will be giving orders to police officers or to army people or to, let's say, mountain service, to whomever is there, because the rescue operation needs to be coordinated and everybody needs to listen to one person. I'm writing usually it's a firefighter, not always. For example, where there would be a terrorist attack and it's apparent, the police officer would be in charge, and the rules are given in the IRS Act. The operational activity of the integrated rescue system is across the whole territory of the Czech Republic, of course, and there is a 24/7 service for emergency calls reception and evaluation. So 24/7, someone will take your call and put you through to whoever's necessary or send you the units directly. So what are the IRS units? There are 2, let's say, groups. The first one is called the basic, the second one are others. The basic, as you can see, fire and rescue service, police, emergency medical service, and incorporated municipal fire brigades. It sounds strange, but basically the fourth category are the volunteer firefighters or company firefighters. It's about 70,000 extra people that are part of the area coverage, fire protection area coverage, while the Fire and Rescue Service is a state organization of about 10,000 people. So the municipal fire brigades and the company fire brigades really need to help too, because otherwise it wouldn't be enough. Thank God we have a long tradition of the municipal fire brigades, so it's a bit of a tradition. Both Fire and Rescue Service and police are in scope of the Ministry of Interior, even though Fire and Rescue Service, the name is also a bit strange. Because originally it was firefighters, fire brigade, but since in the modern world only about 15% of our interventions are putting out fires, it ought to be called actually just rescue service, but the name was kept because of historical reasons, and just the rescue was added, so this a bit strange name came out of it. Also, the Fire and Rescue Service from these three is the only IRS unit that has compulsory arrival time. So, meaning if you call the emergency phone number and they take your call, they send you their firefighters, and the arrival times are as follows. I won't go into detail with the danger levels and A and Bs. It's quite complicated, and it goes from the, let's say, area coverage. But the times are quite interesting. So, for example, in the very, very urban areas like big cities, you have to have 2 units at place in 7 minutes. The 7 minutes are needed to, let's say, for the telephone operator to alert the unit. They have to get ready, jump into cars, and come. That everything in 7 minutes. So with a bit more remote areas like mountainous areas or country, this arrival times are of course a bit longer, but usually the times, these are maximum times, and usually they are shorter. So it's incredible, but it's a reality. The police is thinking about the compulsory arrival times, but they somehow didn't manage to put it through yet. And with emergency medical service, it's about how many emergencies there are at the specific point of time, how many doctors are available, and it can be something between, let's say, 10 and 50 minutes. The good thing is that the Fire and Rescue Service people have all obligatory first medical aid training, so usually they are the first one on the scene, and they can give quite good first aid and usually keep the people alive or stabilize them before the emergency medical service comes. The other units, as you can see, there are armed forces, municipal police, emergency services, mountain service, NGOs, and others. And these are, let's say, the bodies that are not active 24/7, or not every one of them, but they make contracts or written agreements with the state, and they provide planned assistance upon request. So they are included in the operational centers, and they can be sent to, let's say, the place of emergency. With emergency services, I mean, for example, gas emergency, when there is some gas leak and there is danger that it could explode, the IRS can call on these, let's say, private companies that are providing these services. Also, armed forces is one of the other units, and in the peacetime, because usually in the peacetime they exercise a lot, they prepare, but they have some manpower to our disposal. So I believe it's about 15 or 1800 people, a lot of equipment and vehicles which are reserved for integrated rescue system purposes, for rescue works and so on. So, crisis management bodies. This will be quite short. Again, you can see the 3 levels of emergency management. Government, which has the strongest executive powers. Basically, when there is a whole nation emergency, government has to decide. And also next to the regional governor, who is the main person or the main body, let's say, on the regional level. This is the only body that is able to declare crisis response measures and the state of crisis. Of course, on the central level, you have also ministries and other central administrative authorities dealing with the emergencies, and also Czech National Bank, which has a special status in the Czech Republic. Then you have the authorities on regional level that can also be police, firefighters, their regional directorates that also do a lot of work in preparedness and in resolution, and they are also part of the crisis staffs. And then authorities on municipalities on all 3 levels. So what's important here, mostly on the top, on the national level, as we could see in the COVID situation, not only the powers and the actions, but also the strategic communication and explanation to the people, because not every time everything is completely clear. And this is also one of the lessons learned that I believe not only Czech Republic, but also other countries will learn from the current emergency. There are, again, on 3 levels, Security Council system, the National Security Council, the Regional Security Council of the 14 regions, and then the equivalent on the municipality level. These bodies are mostly, they have decision-making powers, but they are used mostly in the, let's say, preparedness phase, because they approve strategic documents, they discuss laws, and so on. Theoretically, according to the system setup, they could approve also some measures, but usually there is no time for that during the resolution of the crisis, so their function is mostly preparatory. For example, in National Security Council, we have ministers, deputy ministers, and so on. Crisis staffs, on the other hand, as you can see, the structure is a bit more complicated, beginning with the central crisis staff, again on the central level, then the crisis staffs of ministries and central administrative authorities, regional crisis staffs, and the municipality crisis staff. Here, the main difference is that there are no decision powers. The crisis staffs can only give recommendations, usually to the government. But on the other hand, if you have, for example, central crisis staff headed by the Minister of Interior or the Prime Minister nowadays, or well, let's say at the beginning of the COVID situation, or the Minister of Defense, they have the bodies, they can command the bodies. So usually if the central crisis staff takes some decision, it is put into action right away. But this is on, let's say, lower level. These are mostly deputy ministers, and the task of crisis staffs is really give recommendations and deal with the situation. I also written here at the bottom the central coordination of rescue and remedy work staff. This is a rather special staff. It's not a crisis staff. It doesn't have the crisis in the name. And it is headed by the Fire and Rescue Service. It is used for very large, long, and complex specialized emergencies where the national coordination is, well, there is no state of crisis, but there is some need of a higher coordination. A good example would be an explosion of the ammunition warehouse complex that took place in 2015 at the east of the Czech Republic. Two huge ammunition warehouses were blown up, with ammunition being thrown kilometers away. And it took 5 years to deal with the situation. This central coordination staff was active until the fall of last year, so 5 years of resolving the situation. This couldn't be really done by the government. Here, just very, very quickly, you can see the central of the crisis management system, the position of the government between the preparation process and solving the crisis. The government does both. National Security Council more on the preparation side, and central crisis staff and the crisis staffs of ministries active only in solving the crisis. Basically the same, it's for the local level. You can see the region or region mayor, his security council, municipal security council, and so on. Of course, on the local level, the firefighters, police are more important, so they have their role here too. The next slide, I'm going to deal with the national risk assessment, because it's one of the basic documents for the preparedness. Basically, it tells us what should we expect, and it can be described as a document that defines 21+1 types of emergencies where we do foresee the declaration of the state of crisis. So it could get really ugly. The document was created by an independent expert group who first came up with a registry of 72 possible risks that were basically everything that is possible, from meteor impact to floods or blackout. Then these risks were assessed using a risk evaluation methodology that was also created by this group. And the result of this process was this matrix. So you can see that there are two curves. Both of them depict the risk score value, and they divide the metrics into 3 parts. On the left side, you have acceptable risks. For example, there would be meteor impact or solar storm, which are basically too improbable. Then you have conditionally acceptable risks, like large forest fires, ammunition storage explosions. Yes, they can happen, but we were quite sure we can deal with them without having to declare the state of crisis. The red line tells us which risks we deem unacceptable. And usually there can be also a third line telling us which risks are supercritical. That would be a risk score value over 40, and that are in the Czech Republic floods, long-term drought, and blackout. By the way, I included also, as you can see on the bottom of the screen, the methodology and the final report of the National Risk Assessment are available in English on the Fire and Rescue Service website. I'm sorry that the link is this terrible, but I believe you will be able to copy it in some way, or just to go to the site and find it there, because the methodology was really quite interestingly made. So as I was saying, you have 2 axes on the metrics, probability and impact, and according to these 2, we assess the risk score and the place in the table for each risks. And the unacceptable risks you can see on the right upper hand side. That these are divided between man-made technologic, man-made sociogenic, natural abiotic, and natural biotic. So you can see that, for example, floods, long drought, epidemics, and among man-made, these are migration wave, blackout, radiation, accident, and others. As I said, 21 +1. This +1 is military invasion to the Czech Republic, and it's +1 because, as I mentioned on the slide with the legal framework, this would be dealt with by a different system, by a system of defense planning. So we don't include it in the, let's say, others, because it's very, very specific. So what did we do with this matrix? We take the red line and everything that's above it, these 21 + 1 risks. What happened? We assigned an authority responsible for the emergency. For example, for floods, it is the Ministry of Environment. For migration waves, would be the Ministry of Interior. They lead the emergency resolution when the emergency comes. They are the main body responsible. Of course, the government decides, but they lead really the intervention or the resolution, like now the Ministry of Health with the COVID pandemics. And they are also responsible for the preparedness for this type of emergency. So, for example, they have to compile a model action plan for the emergency that includes basic information. How do you recognize that it is this situation? What are the basic measures? What authority would do what? And so on. And basically, these model action plans are then further elaborated in the crisis plans of ministries and also of regions. So the results are basically the 14 regional crisis plans that deal with each of the emergencies they identified, which is also probable on their territory. For example, we do have 2 atomic power plants in the Czech Republic, but if you're 300 kilometers from it, you don't really have to plan that much, because they need to deal with it more locally. Of course, there is one national plan for radiation leakage, but it's not the main scope of some of the regions. And on the other hand, for 3 of the regions, it's in the center. So as I was saying, there are the crisis plans, and they basically provide a basis for the resolutions, because there are concrete, let's say, measures which would be adopted so that the authorities in the region knows what to do if it comes into being. Of course, the national risk assessment is periodically reviewed to show that it's still valid. Nothing has really changed. And the last version approved by the government, it's from the 2016. I've been talking a lot about the state of crisis, and now I will finally tell you what I mean by that. There are 4 of them. In the Czech Republic, the first 2 kinds or types were already declared in the young history of the Czech Republic. The last 2 not. Basically, the state of danger is the most lenient one because it's declared only by the regional governor, and it's only on the part of territory of the Czech Republic and only for non-military threats. State of emergency, which we have, for example, right now, is also for only non-military threats for part of whole territory of the Czech Republic, and it is declared by government or prime minister when it needs to be declared really, really quickly, but then the government must approve later. State of peril to the country is for both military and non-military threats. I wrote what the laws say about it. If the sovereignty, territorial integrity, or democratic principles of the state are jeopardized, then it can be declared. Again, for part of whole territory of the Czech Republic, and it is declared by the parliament. And the last one would be the state of war, also declared by the parliament. Always for the whole territory of the Czech Republic, and it would be only for the military threat or military situation, like, for example, sending military forces abroad. I also included a short overview of the past state of crisis in, let's say, last 20 years. You can see the reason and which state was declared. As you can see, floods have number one, even though landslides, rock slides are also quite common. And in last year, it was a bit more, let's say, because there was, for example, one state of crisis declared because of the illegal storage of hazardous chemical substances. It might not seem like a lot, but the region wouldn't be able to deal with it for mostly financial reasons. The storage was huge, and the owner was nowhere to be found, and there was a risk that these unknown chemical substances can go into the ground. So there was a need to act very quickly. And of course, the COVID, this is the state of emergency we have right now, and it's the longest state of emergency we've had. I believe it's now some 180 days in one piece. So what is good, or what's the purpose of the state of crisis? One of the most important things, next to money, of course, is that the part of the decision on declaration of the state of crisis has to be a list of crisis response measures that are declared. And this is the main reason, because these are exceptional measures to cope with the crisis. They stem from the laws. There has to be a complete list in the law, because you are able to limit the basic rights and freedoms that stem from the Constitution and from the list of basic rights and freedoms. So you can't limit them in other way than by law. You can see a couple of examples I included. For example, evacuation of people and property from endangered places, the working duty I mentioned before with medical students, immediate building of structures or demolishing them. This is important, for example, when there is some unstable building during floods that endangers some place, or let's say the river basin. So you can demolish the building or do some terrain changes even without the approval of the authorities, because it can't wait. And these crisis response measures are, let's say, they stem usually from the Crisis Management Act, and there is several, let's say, levels according to from which or during which state of crisis they can be declared. For example, limiting the use and carrying of weapons would be only during the state of peril to the country. You can't declare it with the, let's say, lower state, because this is one of the principles. These are exceptional measures only to cope with the crisis, so they can be only declared for the necessary time and necessary extent to reach or to deal with the crisis, but you mustn't limit the rights and freedoms of the people more than necessary. Again, the current epidemic situation has shown that some of these measures are lacking. That's why we need the Pandemic Act so badly, because then it's possible to bend some of these rules a bit, but not really very effectively. So, for example, the obligation to wear face masks. This is now only declared by the Ministry of Health, because there is no such crisis response measure that could be used. Also, there's one further category called regulatory measures, which basically mean that the government can regulate sale of export of certain goods or resources, regulate, for example, transport with some emergencies like big pollution and so on. And the regulation of sale and export, again, we can see very well on the pandemic situation, because at the beginnings, where the countries were basically fighting each other, to who will get the masks and the respirators as a first one. There was a ban on export for, let's say, I think it was a couple of weeks or months. So it was impossible to export some of the equipment out of the country because it was necessary to deal with the crisis here at home. So awareness raising in the Czech Republic, there are, let's say, 4 main chapters I would like to tackle here. Right to receive information about risks, the preparation of population, and the preparation of experts, and also the crisis management exercises. So right to receive information, it stems from the Crisis Management Act. So you really have, there's a law that says you have the right to get this information, and it basically says that all individuals and companies, they have the right to be granted information about what threats are or may endanger them, what are the planned measures to deal with them, and how these be performed. Usually the municipal authority would give this information, and they are quite open. This is one of the interesting things. I already mentioned that we have 2 atomic power plants, and when I'm lecturing with the people that can respond, I usually ask the question if the people that live in the vicinity of these atomic power plants, are they more or less afraid of the radiation, of the leakage, and so on? Well, the response, or the answer is they are less afraid because they have all the information. This is the second point, the information for inhabitants of specific locations. They have all the information, what exactly is radiation, how it would be tackled, that there are plans for it. They have the iodine tablets, and they have all the information. So it's funny, but the polls show that the inhabitants in, let's say, 10 kilometers radius from the atomic power plants are less afraid of nuclear energy than those who live 200 kilometers away from them. Also, the Crisis Management Act introduced an obligation for TV and radio broadcasters. They have to broadcast information of the declared state of crisis and the crisis response measures that were adopted, and they have to do it for free, immediately, and without changing the meaning. So this is how the information basically gets to people. Of course, who wants the information, the people can find them in the brochures, on the web pages, and so on. But these are the 3, let's say, legally given ways. So, concerning population preparation for emergency events, there is a systematic education of pupils and students at schools, and with pupils and students, I mean everyone from kindergarten through elementary, high school, then also, of course, the adults and senior citizens, with a special focus on disabled citizens and foreigners. So the children are usually taught according to the age group. Of course, the topics have to be first very simple, and then with the high schools, they go to quite complex ones. But as I said, there's a systematic education, but there's also quite a lot of, let's say, ad hoc activities, like the firefighters come for debates to schools with really small children. I think this is this slide, yes. With the small children, it's important, for example, to know what the firefighter looks like in their complete equipment, because for the children, this can be really scary thing. So this is also the thing we do. We also educate the educators because, and we provide them with teaching aids because these are the people that teach them the children what they need to know. Systematically. So this is cooperation with the universities, providing brochures, leaflets, various, let's say, interactive aids, and so on. It could be board games, short animated films, DVDs. There can be also excursions to the fire brigade stations and much more. There's also quite a lot of projects and events for the public, from let's say ads in subways, through brochures or seminars they can attend. Also, one of the points, it's the preparation of civil protection experts, because we need to prepare the experts too. So, for example, in regions or municipalities, so that they know what they are doing, where they can find the information, what's important, and so on. And not only the state people, but also, let's say, people who work at the critical infrastructure facilities and so on. And the aim is to ensure more effective emergency preparedness and response. So if everyone's better prepared, the situation should run more smoothly. And then there are crisis management exercises, which I will deal as the last one. The population preparation for emergencies, I try to, let's say, sum in these two chapters. What we aim for, the knowledge and skill set that is required in the end, is that the people behave responsibly, they don't create dangerous situation themselves. Like, for example, if there's a flood, it's really not a good idea to take a boat and try to float on the river, because it may be fun. Yes, it may, but then someone has to rescue usually. They have to be aware of the possible risks. They have to know how to recognize them. And again, this is true from the small children up to the senior citizens. They have to know what to do in case of various emergencies. And they have to know how to protect themselves and possibly others, that would be with adults. For example, when there are adults and something is happening, so that they can help senior citizens, children, and so on. And also, one of the chapters we are trying to put forward a bit more nowadays is the preparation of the homes for difficult situations. A couple of years ago, there was a huge uproar when Germany put forward their new civil protection strategy, because it included information that the people should have water, medication, food, and so on in their home for emergency situations. And it is true, yes, because when, for example, there is a blackout combined with heavy snowfall or something, you can't get out of the house, it's good to have the basic stockpiles at home. And we try to do this because there is never enough rescuers to rescue everyone, especially when there is some large-scale emergency. Because if you have some emergency that endangers a larger area, there is just too many people, and it will take time before we get to some of them. This is also why the firefighters and the police officers are always so angry when the people they evacuated thought, okay, we think now it's okay, and they go back. And then they get evacuated again, but then it's helicopter or the boat, and it takes much more effort. And unfortunately, this also happens. These are practical experience. What is important, we try to increase the societal resilience, and it means then, in effect, increased security. If the people know the risks, they behave responsibly, they know what to do, and they can help others, the society as a whole is more resilient, meaning less casualties, lower damages, and so on. And as I said in the connection with the atomic power plants, the people that are informed and prepared are less afraid, because they know what to do. They know they did something to be prepared, and well, it's good also for their psyche. So I basically, I already went through this, so you can see the target groups and some pictures. And as I said, that you can see on the picture on the right-hand side with the small children, they meet the firefighters in in their equipment. They can try on the firefighting helmet, for example. With the bigger children or students, they can be taught on, let's say, cyber security issues or chemical leakage and so on. With the elderly, this is interesting. They are also special, let's say, games, like physical exercise games, held once a year for them, and it's something that combines their physical activity. They have fun and they learn something. And one of the things we encountered, the people are terrified to call the emergency phone lines because they think if I call firefighters and they come, will I have to pay for them? I don't have that much money. So this is also one of the things we learn them, that this is okay, and they can try actually to call the line and how this call would go. And again, one of my favorite pictures, because the little girls are really, really excited to be able to touch this firefighter. So this is also one of the ways we deal with it. High schools are one of the tough nuts to crack, because the teenagers are usually too cool for everything. So you have to come with a different approach. It's really difficult to get their attention. They are really bored, even with let's say, more advanced topics. So what these 5 ladies, it's really not they just happen to be all blonde, but these are ladies that deal with education and population preparation. They are both from police and fire and rescue service. They came with a project with brochure, Smart Blondies Give Advice, which is a bit sarcastic, and the teenagers respond very well to it, and they actually do read the brochure. And one of the things that the brochure did was come with this cartoon and comic approach, and the ladies were, let's say, painted this way in the brochure too. So this is one of very, very, let's say, one of the good projects with a great success. So last 2 minutes to exercises. The Czech Republic takes part in international cross-border national exercises. In cross-regional, regional, they can be exercises of integrated rescue system. They can be tabletop, field, or combined. They can be regular, ad hoc. There's a lot of exercises going on with the cross-border. That would be mostly with Germany and Slovakia, but we do exercise with all of our neighbors. International, you have the NATO CMX exercises, the EU integrated resolve, or the INEX exercises on atomic energy, and lots of others. National exercise, these are usually concentrated on floods or radiation leakage. The radiation leakage exercise, I have it on the next slide actually. So we can have field exercises, as you can see, for example, on the picture on the left side, tabletop, where it's just about crisis steps and decision making combined and so on. I believe most of you know this. So one of the regular national exercise is called zone, meaning the contingency planning zone around of the nuclear power plants. And as I said, it's national, field, and tabletop, so combined. And it is held every 2 years. Each power plant gets its turn in 4 years. So this is given by the law. We have to do it to be absolutely sure that we are prepared. The scenario is usually a simulated incident that results in radioactive material leaking outside the plant. So outside the plant, this is important because we have to evacuate the population, do a lot of measurements. As you saw on the right picture, this is also part of the exercise. And after each of these exercises, there is evaluation, comments, recommendations how to improve the systems, and mandatory tasks. Usually it's about practicing what's in the plans, practicing the communication, getting to know the procedures and so on, and also discovering the gaps, updating the contingency plans, learning how to communicate with the media better, and so on. Also, I included one of the exercises that was cross-border with Germany. And also here you can see that it's a Czech state and private company, because the Czech company, this is the power grid operator in the Czech Republic. And the scenario was extreme weather that caused the failure of the transfer grid between Czech and German substations. And to up the odds, there was also forest fire with injured firefight and IID discovery. So lots of IRS and not only IRS units have to be involved with the helicopter, and they practice also building the temporary masts and so on. And of course, because it was cross-border, the communication was much more difficult, but this is something we need to exercise for. Okay, I believe I said everything I wanted to say. So if you have any questions, I'm ready to respond to them, or to, you can see my email address. So if you have some questions later, or you will be able to get in contact with me, and we can deal it then bilaterally. So thank you for the attention.
Okay, thank you. So wonderful presentation. Thank you very much. So we are getting towards the end of our time here, but I do have a number of questions for you, Magda, if we could go ahead and
okay, sure.
Ask these questions. We got a few questions. So the first thing is kind of going back to previously in your presentation is, you know, given the size of the Czech Republic with regards to Europe and others, which document do you have for a legal basis for seeking or providing assistance in the event of a major disaster? So, and how do you integrate NATO assistance when it may be needed, or in the worst case, you know, scenario of a catastrophe? And also in terms of, you know, host nation support. And you being a NATO civil expert, I'm sure you fully understand all that. So kind of the legal basis for seeking or providing international assistance, and then integrating that assistance along with your host nation support. Where does that foundation and that legal framework come from?
Funnily enough, as I said, the Fire and Rescue Service deals with 15% of the fires and a lot of others. It's again our operations center that is a contact point for NATO and also for EU in this regard, because Fire and Rescue Service is responsible for emergency management. So it would go through our operations center. The basis for that is given in the Crisis Management Act, in the IRS Act, and I believe also in the Fire and Rescue Service Act. When it comes to host nation support, of course, this is a bit more of the army or armed forces issue, and this is a bit of a sore point, I believe, for us, because thanks to the position of the Czech Republic, if something were to happen in, let's say, the east, it's quite probable that a lot of units of allies would have to go physically through the territory of the Czech Republic, and we have some plans, but I'm afraid this would be more dealt with by the Ministry of Defense. But it's partially integrated into the crisis plans of the regions. So unfortunately, here you would have to go to the defense of the country planning more. So again, we are a rather small country. So if you also go from the 7 baseline requirements of NATO, we would have terrible issues with that, because just providing the healthcare and accommodation to the, let's say, 2% of the population moving, it would be improvisation, because we are not able to really prepare for it. So that's really when this number of people comes, they will be provided for. They would be probably, but this is the beauty of crisis management, improvisation, and usually it turns out adequate, let's say.
Okay, great, thank you. And to follow on with that, so what are the preconditions? Let's say maybe that's even from the EU Civil Protection Mechanism, maybe just to change the kind of scope a little bit here. But what about the preconditions that must be met, numerical or territorial involvement, or say in terms of human loss, to declare a state of emergency in your country? And then also what would trigger, again, an international response? So do you have kind of set defined requirements in scope and scale for declaring disasters and state emergencies?
Well, partly. It's dealt with, I didn't include it in the presentation, but it's dealt with mostly the constitutional acts on security. There are the, let's say, basic conditions for the declaration of states of crisis, but it's not completely precise because you have always go from the situation. So usually with the bigger emergencies, the central crisis staff gets into the session and they discuss it and they decide ad hoc. There are some basic, let's say, requirements what has to be fulfilled. For example, the really basic one is you are unable to deal with the situations via the let's say normal functioning of the system. If you need to go one step up, you really need to declare the states of, let's say, emergency or danger and so on. As to the second part of the question, again, it would be probably the crisis staff that discusses if it's necessary to ask for international aid. It doesn't matter if it's through EU or through NATO, through the Civil Protection Mechanism and so on. And it happens also now with COVID. We did ask for international assistance several times, and it was provided mostly during the UCPM, the Union Mechanism. And as I read several times a week the minutes from the Central Crisis Staff, it's usually discussed there in the broader scope of the deputy ministers and the experts. Also, the assistance we provide broad, so it usually goes both ways. And in concerning, for example, the rescEU, we are not really the target group of what's included. Now the scope shifts a bit towards medical assistance. So of course we did receive some ventilators and so on, but no big forest fires and so on. But yeah, usually it would be the session of crisis staff, central crisis staff most probably, that would deal with this question, and it would be decided ad hoc.
Okay, thanks. The next question is, could you kind of briefly explain the examples of man-made, technogenic, sociogenic, and natural abiotic and biotic crisis typologies? So you had your slide there and your matrix
Okay.
and your schema, right?
I don't know all of them by heart.
Maybe just a couple of examples would be a good aspect from what you're planning for in the Czech Republic, or what are you seeing systemically throughout the Czech Republic of reoccurring hazards?
One small notion for those of you who come from EU member states: we did a report according to Article 6 of the mechanism, and it's about 40 pages. It took me quite some time to write it, and there is about 10 or 11 pages on this topic, so I would recommend this. There's basically everything. Unfortunately, I don't have it on this laptop, but the natural would be, let's say, the floods, droughts. It could be, there are several types of floods, of course, very high temperatures, snowstorm, and so on. The abiotic, this is pandemics, that could be epidemics of, let's say, the animal diseases, like, for example, the swine flu, or also the plant diseases, the field cultures. The technogenic, that would be, for example, the sociogenic would be the migration wave. or terrorist attacks and stuff like this. And the last category, that would be, for example, blackouts, security of critical information infrastructure, and so on. If you go to the link that was on the slide, there is the complete report, and these there are all the 21 emergencies stated.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's shift over to excuse me, mitigation real quick. So are there any nature-based solutions applied to mitigate floods and landslides in the Czech Republic other than the preparedness measures?
Yes, it's other preparedness. Oh yeah, right.
Other than regular preparedness, so are there any sort of nature-based solutions that you use in terms of mitigation?
Yes, it is quite funny because floods and drought are extremely narrowly connected with each other. For example, floods usually follow after some period of drought because the land, the soil can't take the water very well, and we try to deal with them in a connected manner. So let's say we try to have some places where the rivers can go out of the riverbeds. We try to have better retention of water, like creating moors or some these wet places in the nature where the water can really flow freely, and it also improves the retention on water. Of course, there are quite a lot of dams in the Czech Republic because we are, let's say, the roof of Europe. We have a lot of rivers begin on our territory, but there is no bigger river flowing through here. Everything flows right out of the country. That means also that the water level rises very quickly, and that's why, for example, on the Moldau River, the second biggest and the longest river in the Czech Republic, there is a series of dams that serve for both the drought periods and when there is a risk of floods. They let out a bit more water from them so that we can, or the dams can then take a bit more water. So basically the measures to fight both drought and the floods.
Okay, thanks. And so the last question, because we're running a little bit long here, and then of course, if you have any questions after this that we haven't answered, because there still are a few more questions, you can put them in the LinkedIn group and we'll answer them as soon as we can. So given the similarity between the IRS and the US-based Incident Command System, ICS, how does the command structure work in practice? So there was no information on using a unified command concept. Is the role of the joint commander more of an operational role, like operations chief, rather than commanding all aspects of the response, such as an incident commander?
Mostly the intervention leader is a tactical level. So it is really on the place of intervention, because you have the strategic, the operational, and the let's say the tactical level. So on the operational level, there is one joint center. Of course, you can call emergency medical service or the police, but they will deal with it. But the firefighters operate the integrated operational center. So usually most of the more complex emergencies go through this one. But the intervention leader, this is really a person that is on the place of the intervention, doing the tactical leading of the situation and commanding the also other units. Of course, if it's bigger and more complicated, you can have one leader and then sub-leaders, or then leaders of the other units. You can have one police officer that will listen to the intervention leader and then give further commands further. So it's about coordination, and it can be a bit more complicated, but it's really the tactical level.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. Okay, Harold, over to you. Do you have any other final comments before we close out the presentation for today?
No, I would like to join those who have said this has been very informative, very good presentation. And I'd like to join them to say this was very valuable. Thank you, Magda.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Magda. And once again, thank you everybody for attending. And of course, keep following on the events. And then we will have more coming up as well. If you have any questions that you'd like for Magda to address, you can either email me or Harold, or even you've got Magda's email address. But of course, it might be best to put them in the LinkedIn group so that we can share them with the community. All right, thank you, everybody. Have a great day, and thanks for attending.
Thank you.
Bye.
And see you next time.